Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you my very first Are You Afraid of the Dark episode review. Now, what I'm referring to is not the revival show that's currently going on, but I'm talking about the show from the first 5 seasons, and I guess 6 and 7 as well, from the 90s to the early 2000s. And this episode comes from season 4, and this is one of my personal favorite episodes I want to touch on. And I thought I would start here as opposed to how I started the Nightmare Room, because I didn't have that much connection to that. But I do have connection to this, and I want to start off with one I know I love. So I'm going to talk about The Tale of the Water Demons. I love a lot about this episode because to me, this episode kind of shows the most strengths that the Are You Afraid of the Dark TV show had to offer. I know a lot of people are on the camp that they think that Are You Afraid of the Dark is a better TV show than the original Goosebumps show. And in a lot of regards, if you put the best of Are You Afraid of the Dark and put the best of Goosebumps from the TV shows and put them against each other, I think you can make a strong case for Are You Afraid of the Dark, but I'm just part of the camp that I just don't see Are You Afraid of the Dark being a better TV show than Goosebumps. No offense, but I think some of the better episodes of Goosebumps flesh out characters more. They have more emotional moments. They have more fleshed out stories, especially in the two-parters. You don't see that much done often in Are You Afraid of the Dark. You know, to be kind of, you know, a devil's advocate here, for the people arguing that Are You Afraid of the Dark's a better TV show, I would just say that most of the time you're getting a 17 to 18 minute horror story made to be like a short story, a campfire tale, and I can understand if you like that more than, you know, a book trying too hard or trying too little, being adapted into a TV episode. I totally get it. I just view that to be its kind of its weakness, its main weakness as a show. But I will be fair on that when I review episodes from this show, because they are made to be campfire tales. They're not made to be full books, fleshed out stories. You just got to take them as they are. And this is definitely one of the better episodes, I think, in the show, because I think it highlights everything I look for in kids' horror, done in a very small scale. But I digress. DJ MacHale has also said that this is one of his favorite personal favorite episodes, and I can see why. And it was also originally supposed to be longer than it actually ended up. And they had to trim out a lot to make this episode fit into the time crunch they needed. With the intro, outro, credits, and then, of course, the Midnight Society bits in the beginning and ending of the episode. So, you know, part of me wants to see the original script of this, because it was really great. The script was written by Scott Peters, and the episode was directed by Ron Oliver. Two of those folks are well known in the Goosebumps TV show. Spoke about them ad nauseum. Scott Peters has done episodes like The Perfect School. Ron Oliver has done episodes like Cry of the Cat, Say Cheese and Die. You know, some classic episodes. So when I came across this episode, this was one of the episodes I never watched as a kid. My exposure to the show when I was a child was in the early 2000s, when those later seasons were going on, and maybe some sparse reruns on Snick. But I mainly watched Tale of the Hungry Hounds and Tale of the Lonely Ghost on the Snick compilation VHSs growing up. And I know those episodes like the back of my hand compared to the rest of the show. But this was one I discovered relatively recently when I got Paramount Plus, and when the show was added on Paramount Plus a while ago. I decided to watch through some episodes, and this one really caught my interest, and I really want to talk about it. I have a lot I want to say positive and negative about it, if I do have negatives at the end, so stay tuned for that. And let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So, the story kicks off with the Midnight Society, you know, setting up the stories as they usually do. This is a Tucker story. Tucker is one of the Midnight Society members, and Tucker sets up this plan to convince the Midnight Society to get prepared for his story, and he sets it up, throws the dust into the fire, and says, "The Tale of the Water Demons." And the story kicks off with these two boys. One boy is named Sean, and one boy is named Dean. Now, Sean's the main character, and he's not the typical protagonist on Are You Afraid of the Dark. He's kind of a jerk to his cousin Dean. It's revealed that he's staying in this coastal town and forced to work at this convenience store that his uncle's family owns. And he has to work with his cousin Dean to help the family out. And Sean is depicted as like taking stuff from the convenience store and not paying for it and upsetting Dean. And him and Dean don't have the greatest relationship, essentially. But it's revealed that Dean has to make a delivery of coffee to this ship captain's house that lives on the edge of town by the ocean in this really creepy area, and he doesn't like going over there. But Sean's excited to go because he thinks that this guy's going to give him a nice tip because he's a ship captain, he has a nice house on the water, and he's like, let's go there now before it gets too late. So the boys head out, and unfortunately it gets dark before they arrive, and they park their bikes, and they have to walk through this fog to get to the house. And they knock on the front door, and there's no way to get inside, but they find some instructions that leads them to the pantry, and the boys decide to go enter through the back door around the backside. And when you go to the backyard, you see the water, the ocean kind of coming up to the backyard, and you see this hammock there, and you see a buoy out in the water. And the boys enter through the back door of the house, which is also kind of, it's a really nice looking house. It looks like a ship captain would own it. And when the boys enter the house, you see all this nautical decorations and collections of stuff, presumably from the ship captain, stuff that he's gathered. He has his backstory that he was like a shipwreck salvager, and he would go and across the world and pretty much plunder shipwrecks for, gold and stuff. And that's what he based his career on. And Sean notices all this beautiful ornate trinkets in the room, and he is kind of a kleptomaniac, and he may or may not steal something out of one of these cases that plays into the story later on. So Dean finds the pantry and drops off the coffee, and Dean and Sean get into an argument over waiting for a tip, because Dean just wants to get out of there, and Sean's like, we didn't come all the way here for nothing, and shoves Dean into this bookcase, which proves to be a false door, and both boys end up barreling into this secret room where they meet the ship captain. And the ship captain is this old man. He looks delirious from lack of sleep. He looks like he could be psychotic, and he's freaking out, thinking that these demons have come after him, and the boys tell him, like, hey, we're just here to deliver coffee to you. And the old man snaps back to reality and thanks the boys, and they talk with the old man for a little bit, and then they leave. And Sean's upset that he didn't even get a tip for coming out there, but it then cuts to the old man, who is in the study in the secret room trying to drink coffee, but he accidentally falls asleep. And we see these water demons, to what he was referring to earlier, which are like these revenant creatures that come out of the fog, which, in case you didn't, if you've never seen John Carpenter's The Fog, this story is paying direct homage to that off the bat. So, the boys, while they're heading back home, the captain, he's sleeping, and we see these revenants come out of the water, the ocean, through this fog, and they pretty much form a horde walking towards his house. And then he wakes up before they can reach the house and get to him, and they disappear. So the concept behind these revenants is that when the ship captain falls asleep, they come like animate, and then when he's awake, they disappear, right? So the boys are back at the house, and Dean and Sean are in the room, their bedroom, and Dean's dad comes to tell them to go to bed, and Sean, being, kind of a delinquent type of kid, says, I don't have to listen to you. It's like, it's too early, I'm not going to bed. And he's like, I'm going to go to bed when I want to and where I want to. So he leaves the house, and Dean's dad looks disappointed, but kind of assures Dean that it's going to be cold out, he'll be back soon. But Dean looks worried outside of the window, and can't really do anything about it. So Sean heads down the road, and he ends up, shivering cold, walking all the way back to the captain's house, where earlier he saw the hammock in the backyard, and he's going to crash in the hammock. because he thinks the old man's never going to leave his private room anyway. So he goes out to sleep in the hammock and he gets prepared, but the captain falls asleep again, trying to drink coffee and stay awake, which animates the Revenants, and the Revenants come to the hammock, and there's this really iconic scene where he wakes up and sees these green oozing zombie-like ghost creatures, like putting their hands on him, and he screams bloody murder, which attracts Dean, who is looking for him out of good conscience, and heads the way he hears the screams. And by doing that, he also wakes up the ship captain. So Sean heads to the nearby shack by the ocean to kind of hide in there, and he's hiding underneath this desk. And there's this other iconic scene where he's just sitting there waiting, and he sees this fog billowing through the cracks in the floorboards, and these Revenants come out, putting their hands trying to get him. But of course, when the captain wakes up, the Revenants disappear. So Sean escapes the shack and heads through the back door, and he encounters Dean and says, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "The crazy old guy's he's right. There's these, ghosts coming after him. We gotta find a way to get inside so they don't get us too." And then of course the captain's like, he meets him at the back door and takes him into the study, and the captain shows him this buoy out in the ocean and reveals this backstory of how when he moved to this location so he can plunder this shipwreck that happened where the buoy was at, not too far off in the ocean away from his house. And he kind of reveals that he made a career out of, plundering booty from shipwrecks, and when he took plunder from that specific shipwreck 3 years prior, after doing so, he upset the spirits in the water. And there may or may not be trying to come get revenge on him for taking and disrupting, the grave sites and their valuables. So Dean gets his idea to say, "Hey, why don't you go put them back in the water?" And he gets this idea, but he's like, but there may or may not be some consternation about what exactly he took, and if he still has it or not. He may or may not have traded it away. But that seems like the only logical plan. Even though Sean thinks it's a dumb idea to throw away a bunch of expensive items, there's no other option to try. So the captain agrees, and Sean, Dean, and the captain head out to the same shack by the water to get on the boat and head out to the buoy to drop off the items. But before they can do so, the captain gets knocked out, unconscious. So what happens is the Revenants come alive, and while this happens, Sean has a sense of urgency to hop in the boat and asks Dean for help, but he loses his glasses. Dean wears glasses and he can't see without them. So he stays back with the ship captain, make sure he's all right. And now Sean is forced to go out to the water and handle this operation. And of course, Sean gets scared by these Revenants out by the buoy, and he seems to have accomplished his goal enough to where he starts cheering in victory. So he heads back from on the boat back to the shack and checks on Dean and the ship captain. And they're looking at the ship captain, and they're like, "Okay, now we have to see if he's all right and see how we can get him to get help." But there's a big thing that happens to Dean as a result. And Sean sees this thing happen to Dean, and he has to make a decision based on a choice he made earlier in the story, to maybe apologize and let go of things that he's done. And he may or may not do that, and that may resolve the situation, and things may get reverted back to normal. And then there's an ending that implies that what Sean took away from the experience at the ship captain's house has made him a better person, and Dean has seen this done through an act that was done anonymously, and Dean has finally, seen the change in Sean. And that's where the story ends. And then, of course, the episode wraps up with the Midnight Society putting out the fire and they do their own shenanigans and end the episode. So that's essentially the tale of the water demons. So off the bat, a lot of my positives stem from how much this is a love letter to John Carpenter's The Fog. Now, there are some elements that are pretty much taken almost verbatimly from John Carpenter in this episode, but there is a unique twist with the whole sleeping angle with the captain. I like that the ship captain sleeping created tension throughout the episode. And also the remnants in this episode, the monsters, are fantastic. They're super creepy. They look disgusting. And if I was a kid watching that, I would have been traumatized. Outright traumatized. I would have. It was great stuff. The acting was pretty okay, especially by the ship captain. I give him a lot of praise in this episode. He added a lot of emotion and like real acting experience to this episode. But I want to mention the guy who plays Sean voices Eddie from Ed, Edd n Eddy. And even though his acting wasn't the greatest in this, I can look past that just as a guilty pleasure type of thing and be like, yo, Eddie from Ed, Edd n Eddy plays this main character. I love it. And then Dean, he had a lot of emotional range from his actor too. So the acting was pretty good, especially for Are You Afraid of the Dark standards. It's pretty good. The setting rocked, the atmosphere rocked, the pace felt very steady, you know, for like a little 17, 18 minute story. It got me in that cold, you know, by the ocean, because I live by the ocean, and it makes me feel like in the colder months, like it is now in November, when you go out to sea, and you see the fog and how cold it is, and it gets kind of humid when it's hot during the day and cold at night. You know, that's what it feels like, and it feels very accurate in that regard. I like the decorations of the house. It really added a lot to the ship captain. I like the character development of Sean. He started out as this arrogant kid. He was a troublemaker. He was a thief. He didn't own up to anything that he did. And by the end, he did. He tried to rectify his mistakes. And that's actually the overall theme going on throughout this entire episode, is owning up to your mistakes and trying to make it right. That's the overall moral and theme. Which I was shocked. From a Ron Oliver directed episode, usually there's a lot of silly stuff in it. But I kind of appreciate how he kept this story by Scott Peters to be a more simple and more moral telling story than some of the stuff he's made. Especially in Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps. So I like this change of pace from Ron Oliver. And, of course, DJ MacHale said that this was one of his favorite episodes, and I really agree with that. And I would love to see the extended script that they had to trim down for this to make it, because, you know, he alluded that this episode at one point was so long that they had to trim a lot out to make it adaptable. So if that's out there, someone please direct it to me, because I want to read that. So yeah, I had a blast with this episode, you know, for Are You Afraid of the Dark standards. Now, if I had any negatives, it's more so just a common negative throughout this entire show that I'm probably not going to deduct points on, but, you know, I kind of wish that there was a little more added on to it to help with some context things here and there. But given that, you know, we have to deal with the intro and the Midnight Society every episode, it's something I can't be too harsh on, because they're given 3 to 4 minutes less than Goosebumps gets off the bat running. So, yeah, I can't deduct points on it. So, I will say that moving forward. And I probably won't bring it up too much, but unless I truly feel it. But I think majority of my negatives throughout the entirety of Are You Afraid of the Dark deals with that. I think the main stories, the horror, should be longer. But I can't deduct anything on it. So, from a 0 to 5 stars, for this show specifically, I'd probably give it a 5 out of 5. Honestly, I think it reflects the best aspects of this show can offer. You have, you know, a distinct character arc. You have creepy villains. You have an intriguing premise. There's obvious, you know, love and paying respect to horror writers that this show's commonly known for, and even Goosebumps. And yeah, the nightmare fuel really works. The atmosphere sold me. And I think this is a very memorable story. That's all you can ask for, really. So yeah, that's my thoughts on The Tale from the Water Demons. Let me know down in the comment section. What did you think about this episode? Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.